Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Briar Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood boaters, or business insurance, there's nobody better in the business to work with than the good folks at Briar Greaves Insurance. For more information, visit briargreavesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a Thursday edition of the show. Want to say hello to everybody that is just filing into the chats and the comments. For today's episode, we are going to talk about the huge expectations for the Bucs in 2025. There was a lot of discussion of where we think we can go before the news yesterday, and we'll talk further about how much the Tristan Wirfs injury alters these expectations for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, of course, we'll talk about a couple of players in particular, what their expectations, what our expectations are for them as well. So a lot to get into on today's show. We'll answer questions, comments, and super chats, too, on this episode. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my Thursday co-host and colleague of PewterReport.com, Adam Sly Slavon. How we doing, Adam? Happy Thursday to you.
Happy Thursday to you, Matt. I'm doing great and really excited for this show because there's layers to it, right? Not only does the Tristan Wirfs news yesterday throw a wrench kind of in the plans for the Bucs going into the season, but you look at the expectations for the team in general heading into the season after being a playoff team. What does that next level look like? And who are the players that are going to be vital to the team's success? Because you look at it from kind of both sides of the same token, where you have veteran players that need to step up and return to form in some cases, but also the young players, the guys that are still developing, still trending upward. What does their growth look like this season? I think it's very interesting looking at the expectations for the Bucs, because you can make an argument for a Super Bowl team. You can make an argument that they're going to make a deep playoff run, but what would success be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it's directly black and white either, especially with the news of Tristan Wirfs earlier on. And for those that maybe didn't see it yesterday, we had an emergency podcast yesterday around noon, I think is when we did the show.
Yeah.
That was about an hour after the news broke. So we're pretty quick on it over at Pewter Report. But definitely recommend checking out that episode. Myself and Scott Reynolds went about 45 minutes or so talking about the situation. We spoke about it a little bit later on the 4 o'clock episode of the Pewter Report podcast, where we went through our all-time teams that we drafted as well. But we do want to talk about it today too, because it does go into the topic of the expectations. So, Adam, we heard my thoughts, Scott's thoughts, and everything from the last two shows. What was your initial reaction when you heard about the news about Tristan Wirfs going to miss the first couple of games of the season?
I would have to say it's a similar reaction to what both Scott and yourself were talking about, and that it wasn't necessarily shocking, but it was surprising a little bit to see the news. But after seeing him mandatory minicamp wearing that brace, you're like, something's up with his knee, because last season he missed a game, he came back, you didn't think anything was really wrong, but mandatory minicamp, he's wearing a brace. Like, is there something more to that knee injury than meets the eye? It turns out it was more than precautionary, as Todd Bowles mentioned during that time. But when I look at it, there's still so much time until the season starts. You have to go through training camp in the preseason. So that gives Kevin Carberry and Josh Grizzard time to really plan for life without Tristan Wirfs for a few weeks. And I think a silver lining you can glean from that is obviously that timetable, but also the fact that the Bucs have, under Todd Bowles, gotten off to hot starts every single year. Somehow, some way, they find ways to win games. And last year they were 4-2 without a starting offensive lineman, as Scott Reynolds pointed out in his Pewter Pulse. So my reaction is it was surprising, but not shocking. And I think the Bucs are the right team to kind of manage not having him around, because there's no replacing Tristan Wirfs, the best left tackle in football, but they can find ways to kind of bridge that gap. Because Tristan Wirfs, you can leave him on an island, but Charlie Heck, he's going to have support from the tight end in certain blocking packages, support from the rest of the offensive line. And the offensive line isn't just Tristan Wirfs. It's one of the best in football for a reason, and there's 4 other solid starters there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can't overlook how important, Luke Gedeke is and Cody Mauk. And I think we're all excited for Graham Barton to see what he will do in year 2. But I agree with you, Adam. The fact that all of us were talking about the knee brace on Tristan Wirfs, and I remember too, like I went to take a picture of it, and like the Bucs PR staff was like, "Hey, don't
Yeah.
do that." But when the news came out yesterday, that's why it wasn't shocking, because of the knee brace that we saw. And it almost kind of reminds me of, I know you'll know this one because it's a little more modern day, when Brian Windhorst was like, what is going
Yeah. Yep.
pointing for those listening on the audio. What does this mean here? And it's about, I forgot the trade that happened, but it was some trade that was like really setting up another big thing. And that's what I kind of thought of when it came to, Tristan Wirfs. And I don't think we expected him to miss like a couple of games on the season. And again, he had the surgery. He's not on the PUP. The thought is that he is going to be on the PUP list, but he's not on there just yet. But if he is, that means he would miss the first 4 games. So let me ask you how you felt about the overall, because I think the big anger with Bucs fans right now, like obviously people are upset that Tristan Wirfs isn't going to be playing. I fully understand that because he's arguably the best offensive tackle in the league. But I think what people are just as angry about, and not necessarily at Tristan, maybe a little bit at Tristan, but more the medical staff, is that why did it take so long to get this surgery done if you knew it was a situation that had been going on since last year? Do you feel that same sentiment from Bucs fans, or can you see the other side of it of this isn't just a, hey, your leg is broken, it'll take this surgery and this long to fix it? To me, it's a way more of a touch and go type of situation.
Yeah, I could see the frustration, right? You want to place blame somewhere with Tristan Wirfs not being on the field. Like you're looking up at the sky, like, what have you done for Tristan Wirfs not to be on the field in week 1? But I
Right.
can understand it from the team perspective, from his perspective. While we don't know all the details yet, you kind of wonder if Wirfs was just trying to rehab it on his own. And frankly, I was surprised last season that he returned after a game. Like the Bucs got him last year during a crucial stretch after
Yeah.
only missing 1 game. Now you're kind of seeing what the repercussions of that are, the ripple effect, if you will, that he's going to miss some time to begin the season. But as you said, it's not guaranteed that he's going to miss 4 games. What if he only misses 2 or 3? I mean, that's a much better case,
Yeah.
like best case scenario. And then you also look at it, you'd rather have it happen at the beginning of the year than mid-season when the Bucs have already shown a track record of not doing so well
Right.
mid-season. You don't want to be without Tristan Wirfs during that stretch either.
Yeah, like, again, the Bucs aren't going to be blindsided by the fact that Tristan Wirfs isn't playing week 1, and that's kind of what you talked about earlier. They got plenty of time to prepare with Charlie Heck, and I think this is an interesting and good challenge for Josh Grizzard early on. How do you counter not having a weapon on this team? We heard Liam Cohen call Tristan Wirfs a weapon. I'm sure Josh Grizzard would agree as well. How do you counter? What are some of the adjustments, that come with it? I also think it's important, and it kind of goes back to last year as well. I think you bring up a really good point that he only missed 1 game, because I respect the thought of optimism of maybe he only misses 2 or 3, but I can't help but think, well, what if he misses 5 or 6 or 7?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he will, but I'm just saying, what if? And I say that because I think the Bucs, we've talked about it and we can talk about it. I think the Bucs have a nice 2-year window right now where they got to get to a championship game, at least in one of these next 2 years. But you don't want to rush back Tristan Wirfs. And it makes me think, well, did he rush back last year when he only missed the 1 game and then returned? Maybe he should have sat out another game. And sure, you can look back and be the Monday morning quarterback, or as I said yesterday, the Monday morning left tackle, because we're talking about the left tackle. It's easy to look back and be like, well, they should have done this and they should have done that, because if we had the answers to the test, we'd all be billionaires. I would have won the lotto. I would have won a ton of great bets, huge parlays,
Got some
and stuff
Bitcoin.
like that. Yeah, exactly. But, invested in Apple back in whenever, that was the thing to do. But we don't have those answers. So it's easy to look back and be like, well, this was wrong. This was wrong. That's part of my issue too. Like, obviously watching tape is so important, but it is funny watching like a screenshotted picture being like, what was this quarterback doing on this play? Or like, why didn't the running back run to this hole? And it's like, well, everything's going like 100 miles an hour and you have 3 seconds to decide. It's not as easy. It's just like, watching a tape in your office being like, oh yeah, you should have done that. Like, sure, anyone can come up with that inference after you have more time to really look at it. Let's get to some. I saw some funny comments I wanted to address.
Oh boy.
Both by Piss Missile Pete, which I found them very funny. Piss Missile Pete says, why is the Buccaneers team doctor Dr. Nick Rivera from The Simpsons? Adam, have you ever watched The Simpsons?
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, hi,
Dr.
everybody.
Nick.
Yeah, and then there was Dr. Hibbert. He was like the actual doctor they went to. But anyway, I thought that was a great comment. I really don't want to put much blame on the Bucs medical staff. But I think this is more than just, you'll be fine. We'll worry about it later. I think there were a lot of different ropes and tropes and different things that they had to look at. And for all we know, Tristan didn't want to get surgery until later anyway. And that's ultimately, his choice. So let's not jump to conclusions and jump down the throats of the medical staff just yet. But this other comment from Piss Missile Pete that I found very funny. Put that 475-pound guy from the Gators at left tackle. Of course, talking about Desmond Watson. It's a funny idea, but I don't think Desmond Watson has the speed to get there.
No, there's already talk of putting him in the backfield. I don't think putting him on the blind side will do him any favors. But you mentioned kind of before the show talking about some other options, because there's Charlie Heck, who came in as kind of like a veteran minimum free agent, just to kind of hold down the spot just in case. But who are some other options in your mind, Matt, at who could be left tackle? Should the Bucs do something drastic, maybe move Luke Gedeke over, Cody Mauch, who played left tackle at North Dakota State? What about Elijah Klein, Ben Chukwuma? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Charlie Heck is going to be the guy starting at left tackle, but I think it begs a bigger question about what about the overall depth of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Because now you have to consider, well, what happens if something goes wrong with Luke Gedeke? And something did go wrong with Luke Gedeke in week 1 of last season. He had a concussion and missed a little bit of time. Remember, it was Justin School that started in week 2 against Detroit, and Aiden Hutchinson had all of those sacks, but the Bucs won the game, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. So now you have to figure out, well, what is your depth looking like at tackle? Now with, let's just say Tristan Wirfs out of the picture and he's not coming back relatively anytime soon. Because you got Silas Dancy in there, as you mentioned, Ben Chukwuma, a guy that is certainly an intriguing prospect, but I also don't think is going to be ready for the regular season. I don't think Lorenz Metz is that answer either, and he's just way too slow as well. No disrespect to him. Raekwon O'Neal, again, is a guy that has been here. He's been in Seattle. Bucs fans have mentioned Donovan Smith before. And I'm not saying they should go after Donovan Smith, but he didn't play last season. He was the tackle of the Chiefs the year before, won his second Super Bowl in his career, his first with Kansas City. Of course, he won with the Bucs. I would entertain this for the thought process of he's not, again, you have Charlie Heck starting at left tackle. So we're talking about depth and someone that you can kind of plug and play if something happens to Luke Gedeke.
Yeah.
Donovan Smith is coming off of a year where he wasn't playing football. So he's going to be motivated. I think the adrenaline's going to be pumping. And he lives in Tampa. He's familiar with not the whole team. I mean, I don't believe he was here when Baker Mayfield got here. The only teammates he would really have is, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, really anyone from like the Super Bowl team.
The OGs,
Yeah, he didn't really work with a ton of the guys on the offensive line right now. But Donovan Smith played some of his best football when the Bucs won the Super Bowl in 2020, when they won 13 games in 2021. If they needed a guy to come in for like 2 or 3 games, it's a dude that's familiar with the area, familiar with the organization, even familiar with Todd Bowles. I don't think it's a bad idea if he has to start a game or two. Now, people are mentioning Jedrick Wills as well, the former Browns offensive tackle that was teammates with
before Tristan Wirfs back in the day.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Part of that draft.
Now, his story is pretty interesting because he was like a high-end player for the for the Cleveland Browns, but then he tore his ACL, I believe, in the 2023 season. Yeah, they picked up his option in 2023. But then he went on injured reserve after tearing his MCL. Sorry, he suffered an MCL injury in November of 2023. So I'm curious with him because he was certainly not a Tristan Wirfs level, but I don't think he was the worst player by any means. The team picked up his option. I have a feeling he's waiting to like fully heal, fully recover, and then may have a better option than just, going to a team that needs somebody to start for a game or two. I think he wants like a legit second contract or a legit opportunity to be a full-time starter somewhere else. But people have mentioned him. The guy I would have my eye on, and he's played left tackle, he's played right tackle, he started, he's come off the bench as well. And this is an offensive tackle. His name is George Fant.
Yes. Yep. I'm
He
glad you brought him
has,
up.
yeah, he's been around the league for a little while now. He was actually an undrafted free agent out of Western Kentucky, went to the Seattle Seahawks in 2016. He played for the Seahawks until 2019, was on the Jets for 3 years. And his time with the Jets was very interesting because he started at right tackle. Then there was an injury to Mekhi Becton, who they had drafted to play left tackle. They moved him to left tackle. The next year, he was the starting right tackle. More injuries happened to the offensive line. They moved him to left tackle. And the third year, he played left tackle as well. So this is a guy that has moved around, played different positions. Last year, he went back to Seattle, only played in 2 games, but his overall grades were not horrendous. They weren't great, but they weren't horrendous. He got a 65.8 grade in week 1 when he played. It was Seattle against Denver. His next game wasn't until week 9 against the Rams. It was a 56.7 grade overall, but a 63.4 run blocking grade. So to me, if I'm Jason Light, I'm looking at George Fant saying, this is a guy that has played everywhere. He's been on the left side. He's been on the right side. And you don't have to start him unless something happens to Luke Gedeke or if Charlie Heck doesn't work out as a left tackle. And it's not for the entirety of the season. I think it immediately boosts what Tampa Bay has for depth reasons and depth purposes at offensive tackle specifically, because I like Elijah Klein. I respect that he went out and played offensive tackle after playing guard in all of training camp and the summer and everything like that, but did it in that preseason game against the Jaguars. But I still think, unless it's an emergency, he's slotted for the interior, maybe even backup center or something like that, than he is at offensive tackle. So I think George Fant would be a great backup addition that is difficult to find in the summer with 2 and 3 weeks to go before training camp. If you want to secure more depth, I think George Fant is the way to go.
I think he is too. And I was kind of looking at some free agent offensive tackles, and he was the one that jumped out at me too, because he's played over 100 games, 75 starts. As you mentioned, he started for different teams, and he wasn't bad last year. He was serviceable. And I think that's what the Bucs need the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, if Wirfs is out that whole time, is somebody that's serviceable that can hold down the fort. And I think that Bucs fans should not be as frustrated as some of them are out there about the medical staff and kind of looking at things like, why now? Because the Bucs can weather this storm just based on having Kevin Carberry and Brian Picucci, who have developed so many offensive linemen. They can take somebody for a few weeks and make them look okay. They did that with Justin School. And last year, he was a pretty solid guy. I think he had like a 60 PFF grade. After the Lions game, that wasn't completely his fault. He actually did pretty good. And I think that'll be the same thing. Maybe Charlie Heck has a bad first game, but he kind of comes into his own during that stretch when they need him.
Right, yeah. I think that's a great point, because remember, Justin School, who's now with the Minnesota Vikings, Justin School was ran out of town for how bad he was against the Lions. But then Liam Cohen was like, that's on me.
Sack was on
like
him.
I put him in bad situations, and one wasn't his fault either. So that's why, again, I think this is important for Josh Grizzard, because is he going to put Charlie Heck out on an island, or is he going to give him more help, maybe an extra tight end, as you mentioned too, or will he call things the right way to protect Charlie Heck but still get the best out of this offense? And of course, like we talked about before, Kevin Carberry and Brian Picucci, 2 of the best in the business. That's Grizzard next to Kevin Carberry. But nonetheless, some great offensive line coaches. So, Adam, let's answer the big question. How much do your expectations change for the Bucs with this news that Tristan Wirfs is going to be out for a little bit? We don't exactly know how much yet. We're predicting 4, might be a little bit less, might be a little bit more. But how does this impact your your thoughts on the overall expectations for the team in 2025.
To me, it doesn't really change my expectations for what the Bucs are going to do this season, because a theme of Todd Bowles' teams have been never get too high or too low. And I think this is one of those moments where you can't get too low, and no matter what happens, you can't get too high. And when you kind of look at the whole picture of it, he's only going to be out 4 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be 5, it could be 3, but you're still going to have him for at least 2/3 of the season, and you're still going to have all the weapons on offense. Like, it's not a completely bleak picture, and I think that the Bucs will make things work while Wirfs is out. And to get to a Super Bowl, to get deep into the playoffs, there are going to be tests, there are going to be obstacles. This is just one of them. Like, the path to greatness isn't easy, and this is something that the Bucs are going to have to learn to deal with in the coming weeks. And I think that they will, and that the expectations overall shouldn't really deviate from this team, because when you look on paper, there's still so much talent. There's reason for optimism to think that the floor of this team is a 10-win team, and the ceiling, maybe as Lil Wayne said, there is no ceilings with this team.
One of the best mixtapes of all time.
Yes, sir. Watch my shoes. But the ceiling could be 12, 13 wins.
I loved Swag Surf. That was probably one of my favorites. What's it? There was one. It's not like, if you listen to it on Spotify, it's not on Spotify, but his original No Ceilings mixtape, he did it was off the beat of the Black Eyed Peas song. I got a feeling, but it goes, I got no ceilings. But it's not on the Spotify version. I'm sure it's like a copyright thing. Death of Auto Tune was another good one. They're all really good. Anyway, shout out No Ceilings. Do you know what a DVD is?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. So
a DVD player too.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. What I was going to say is the Tristan Wirfs injury might be the beginning of the championship DVD, as they say. Like, when a team wins a championship, there's like the DVD of the whole season and like the adversity they've overcome and how the season went and how they went through the playoffs and everything like that. I think the Tristan Wirfs injury might be the beginning of the championship DVD for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if they do win it all. I do think it does impact the beginning of the year, because I think if you look at the schedule, with a healthy Tristan Wirfs against Atlanta, at Houston Monday night, home against the Jets, home against the Eagles, I think I would probably bet on the Bucs going 3-1 more than them going 2-2. But now, without having Tristan Wirfs, I would probably bet more on them going 2-2 than I would 3-1, if that makes sense overall. Just because some of the pass rush that they're going to have to deal with, I think, will be a little bit more daunting without Tristan Wirfs than certainly with him. I'm not even as concerned about Atlanta as I am Houston with just their overall defense. I think D'Amico Ryans is a great defensive mind. I like to see defensive coaches, head coaches, thrive in the NFL, because they're very few and far between. Todd Bowles is one, D'Amico Ryans is another, but there's not a lot of them across the league. But I think that Texans defense is really going to give the Bucs a lot of issues. The Jets, I was saying this on yesterday's show, while overall not that good of a team, they have some good pieces. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. Defensively, we all know Sauce Gardner, but defensively, they got Will McDonald from Iowa State that's coming into his own, and Jermaine Johnson, he is coming off of an Achilles injury. Achilles or ACL, but one of the long-term injuries. He is coming off of, I think, a torn ACL. But he has that game-wrecker ability. And then, of course, the Eagles, we all saw what their pass rush did in the in the Super Bowl. So I understand the Bucs have had the Eagles' number the past couple of years. But the Eagles also came into Tampa in a primetime game and beat them in Tampa. I know it wasn't the playoff game, but it's not like they're undefeated against the Philadelphia Eagles. So to me, I still think they beat the Jets. But to me, I think that Houston game and that Philadelphia game becomes a little bit more dicey than, I think in the past I would have said, oh, they should beat the Houston Texans based on the injuries the Texans have on offense and, the star power that the Bucs have on their own offense. But now I don't feel as good about it.
Yeah. And to kind of expand on my point about my expectations not really changing, I kind of see the first 4 games where the Bucs go 2-2. But what's not to say that the Bucs can't change their ways from the past couple of seasons where they were on these midseason slumps and kind of win a couple of those games. And I think that the Bucs Like pretty much when you look at last year, they were in almost every single game. And I think they win a couple of those close ones had they had Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Now, when you look at not having Tristan Wirfs, that Texans game is scary because Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson are two really good edge rushers. But on the flip side, Matt, the Texans don't have a good offensive line either. They traded Laramie Tunsil. They don't like the Bucs are going to be blitzing them too. So I think that'll be a battle. Might be an ugly game, but the Eagles game is another one where not only do they have good pass rushers, they have good interior defensive linemen. So that game in general was going to be hard with Tristan Wirfs, and I think without Tristan Wirfs, it gets less winnable. But if they're 2-2, you'd almost kind of take that, factoring in Wirfs' injury, and then you kind of look at the rest of the schedule and say the Bucs could really get on a roll.
They certainly could get on a roll if they figure out the right situation to put together along the offensive line. It's also very important to have the right situation put together when it comes to your home insurance, and there's nobody better to work with in the game than Briar Greaves Insurance. If you're a longtime podcast listener, you probably remember the late, great Mark Cook talking about Briar Greaves Insurance. Pewter Report Scott Reynolds has been a Briar Greaves customer for years, and there simply is not a better insurance company in the Tampa Bay area. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com to see for yourself. Briar Greaves Insurance is family-owned, and their main goal is helping people. They want to help people find the right insurance policy for you and your family. Whether it's home or auto, boating insurance, or business insurance, turn to Briar Greaves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. The days of waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative, that you don't even know are over. With Briar Greaves Insurance, you'll have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on the best policies. As two recent hurricanes have shown all of us that live in the Tampa Bay area, there is a cost to living in paradise. Briar Greaves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance to make sure you and your home are protected. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com today. That's Briar, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S. Or call their office today at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166, and tell them that Pewter Report sent you. Let's get to a couple of super chats, shall we? Then we'll talk about some individual players.
Yeah.
Ralph Steinbauer says, Bodega. Yeah, shout out to all the good Bodega people. We'll start with Bucs Basement. Thanks for the $4.99 super chat. Who says, Bucs better be careful because without Wirfs and Godwin, they can start the season in bad shape. The defense wearing the cape when they haven't in 2 years. I think that's a really good point, Bucs Basement. There was a time where the Bucs defense was the one kind of saving the day. I think the Superman movie comes out tomorrow. I'm more of a Batman guy anyway. That's been discussed before on the show. But it's been the defense that saved the day. The Bucs offense was all about it last year. But one thing we've mentioned before is now there's going to be two big returns. It's not just Tristan Wirfs. Chris Godwin, we've already known about for a while. So this puts a lot of emphasis, not just on the Bucs offensive line, but like on Emeka Egbuka, certainly Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan too. Because if you're out Wirfs and Godwin, well, that's just another, hill they got to climb.
Yeah, and for Josh Grizzard, he has to figure out a way to keep the train rolling. And you're kind of missing two of your five best offensive players if Godwin and Wirfs aren't healthy and ready to go come week one. And you kind of saw in 2023, as you mentioned, Bucs Basement, Todd Bowles' defense was supporting Dave Canales through and through. When it was at week one Minnesota game, when the Bucs offense was really struggling in the first half, the defense kept him in it until Baker Mayfield told that guy to get his weight up. And you kind of saw the offense like overcome a slow start. And that's what they might need to do the first few weeks of the season. It might not be smooth sailing come week one where the offense is putting up 30 points a game. They might have to take their time and rely on that defense and all the changes Bowles is making to come out with some wins. And it might not be pretty.
And I think, it certainly has the ability to get done, as Bucs Basin with another super chat that's on $1.99 says, Bowles Eureka moment going to be tested early. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think that's a great point from Bucs Basement is how quickly can this Bucs defense kind of acclimate together? You're going to have, Zion and Jamel Dean as your starting corners. They've been there for a while, but, Antoine Winfield Jr. missed a lot of time last year. Is he going to be fully ready to go in terms of like not game shape, but knocking some rust off and things of that nature. He did come back for the playoff game. Tyke Smith is a guy that hasn't played a full-time strong safety. He was the nickel corner last year. There's obviously Hassan Reddick as well, who we'll talk about in a little bit. There's a lot of new additions, but also, what comes from Todd Bowles? Does he actually have the answer? Or is he just kind of blowing smoke? I think that's something that we won't really know until, the game actually happens. But at that point, it could be too little too late.
And you mentioned some of those players in the secondary, whether that's Hassan Reddick. When you look at it, Matt, and I know we came up with a list of a few players, who is most vital for this Bucs team to exceed expectations?
Oh man, who is most vital? I guess it's interesting because it depends on what you value more. Do you value the Bucs getting to the quarterback with more of a 4-man pass rush than having to blitz all the time, or do you value the turnovers and everything like that? Turnovers are most important, but to me, I think it's either Yaya or Hassan Reddick, whoever is going to be the top dog. I think for me, whoever is going to be the leader in getting the sacks, to me, is going to be most vital to this defense getting off the ground. Because I think a lot of the soft coverage by Todd Bowles last year was because of the inability. I think it was because they weren't getting to the quarterback quick enough, so they didn't want to allow the big plays. So to me, it's getting that threat from the edge that they did not have last year, that they want in Hassan Reddick, that they want from a fully healthy Yaya Diaby taking the next step and really moving things forward. I think it's the two of them.
I think when you kind of debate the two of them, the one thing I'll say is, like Hassan Reddick, everyone knows his resume as a double-digit sacker, but what does he have left in the tank? And kind of to your point, Matt, I think what Hassan brings and what Yaya does this season and emerging is going to be the difference between what is a great pass rush and what is a good pass rush. And last year, by all accounts, it was still a good pass rush. They had 46 sacks. They were able to get after the quarterback. When you want to see a more complete attack from the whole front seven, and that starts from the outside, and then you already know the inside is kind of solidified. Should Kalijah and Vita be healthy and stay on the field? To me, when you look at who's most vital, I would still say Antoine Winfield Jr. because you look at the back end, and the issue with the Bucs defense the past few seasons has been allowing quarterbacks to get so many yards, be efficient through the air, no matter who it is. But Antoine Winfield Jr., he's that blitzing coverage kind of playmaker that's really going to be the catalyst for this defense, because you saw what he did in 2023. It's no coincidence that the defense was so good, because Winfield was making game-saving play after game-saving play.
Yeah, I mean, it's still insane thinking about all the stuff that he did in 2023 that got him All-Pro. Not Pro Bowl, didn't make the Pro Bowl, but, got him All-Pro. And it just completely changes the outlook of the entire defense. I mean, this guy does everything. He's got the speed, he can cover, he takes the ball away, he forces fumbles, and he can blitz the quarterback. And I think him with Tyke Smith, now, like, Antoine's worked with a couple of different safeties, most famously like Jordan Whitehead, not just last year, but Jordan Whitehead's first run with this team. But I think Tyke Smith allows Antoine Winfield Jr., and even more specifically, allows Todd Bowles to give even more free reign to Antoine Winfield Jr. and to Tyke Smith. Like, there are times you'd bring Antoine into the box. Sometimes he would blitz, but then he'd help with, like, stopping the run. I'd almost kind of like the idea of bringing Tyke into the box. That's kind of what you do a little bit more with strong safeties, where he's going to play. Let him blitz. Let Antoine Winfield Jr., who's got still a little bit more feel for the game, more of a football IQ, just because he's been in the league for a little bit longer. Let Tyke Smith rush the quarterback, force him to make a throw that he doesn't want to make, or get rid of the ball quicker than he wants to get rid of it. And then there's Antoine Winfield Jr. to intercept the football, because he can read the eyes of the quarterback, see where he's going to go, and anticipate the play before it happens, because he got Tyke Smith on his tail. You can also send Antoine Winfield Jr., and I like the idea of Tyke taking the ball away. He was tied for the team lead. And I love Tyke Smith's ability to knock the football out and forced fumbles. In some ways, I think he can do that better than Antoine Winfield Jr., but I'm so excited for a healthy Antoine Winfield Jr. I can't help but think if he didn't get injured in week 1 and miss so much time and then get hurt like not long after returning again, I'm curious how many more wins this team would have had. Like, would it have impacted their seeding? I don't necessarily know, but I don't think the Bucs would have had to, I know they would have got in anyway because the Falcons lost to the Panthers, but I don't think the Bucs would have been in a situation where they had to win, or at the time they thought they had to win and beat the Saints in that last game of the season. If Antoine Winfield Jr. maybe was available for 3 more games last year.
Yeah, that's a great take. And you have kind of like an interesting thought there in Winfield's impact, because you saw that impact in 2023. I'd argue if he wasn't on the field and doing what he did, the Bucs don't make the playoffs that season. And what you want to see from Winfield coming into this year is to return to being that center fielder of the defense, making those great plays. Rays fans know Kevin Kiermaier for so many years.
Yeah.
That's what Antoine Winfield kind of is for the Bucs defense, because he can do a little bit of everything. He can knock the ball out at the goal line and really just change the outcome. And so when you look at the huge expectations that this team has going into the year, you look at Antoine Winfield Jr., that $84 million contract that he got, and you're like, this is a franchise player. This is a guy that we paid. I don't think he's the type to really slack off just because he got a deal. No. He's going to be hungry. And especially after the way last year played out, you're going to see him, if he doesn't return to 2023 form, he's going to be pretty freaking close.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible to replicate what he did. Now, the greats get somewhere close to it, so I think he can get close to it. And I think Antoine Winfield Jr. might get slept on a little bit this year, just because he wasn't really in the limelight last season. By the way, I wanted to get to this comment. I appreciate D. Wheeler and all of his participation in the show today. In all caps, says, Lord God, I come to you today to pray for my left tackle, Tristan Wirfs. Please help this man heal fast. God, please give him X-Man healing power so that he would only miss 1 game at the most. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. We are all hoping for a quick and speedy recovery for Tristan Wirfs. We actually posted that on our Instagram today as well. But it's going to take more than one to get it done, Adam. I know you had some more players on that list as well. Who do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, so we already dived into the safeties. Why not the cornerbacks? And you look at Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum. And with Jamel Dean, can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the field? I know he hasn't played a full season in his NFL career, but can he be more than just a solid coverage corner? When he's on the field, he's not bad, but can he be a playmaker? Todd Bowles wants playmakers. Jamel Dean is out there catching 50 balls a day, but you don't really see him catch too many during the season. So that's what I want to kind of see from him, to be that veteran. He's a Super Bowl champion. Is he going to be a stabilizing presence, or is presence going to be missed off the field? Because in the Commanders game, he was locking down Terry McLaurin until he was out. And then Josh Hayes came in, you know the rest of that story. And then to Zion McCollum, you look at him, he has all the makings of a number 1 corner. He's in a contract year, so you know he's going to try to ball out. But will he? He didn't get an interception after week 6 last season. And he's a guy who, he had lofty goals, 6 interceptions. If he gets 6 interceptions from Zion McCollum, he's getting paid $20 million a year come free agency. So the cornerback picture is just as vital, if not more important, than the safeties, because you can kind of expect Tyke Smith to get better, for Antoine Winfield Jr. to kind of return to what he was. But what does the cornerback picture look like?
You know, in all honesty, I kind of feel better about the corners than I do the safeties from a depth perspective.
Yeah.
Because you want everyone healthy, but I think there's a lot more questions at safety after Antoine and Tyke than there are at corner. But if we're talking about the main starters themselves, you know, if we're talking about the job of a corner is to limit the number 1 wide receiver and cause a lot of, incompletions and not allow big plays, well, Jamel Dean is great at that. But that's not what we're asking Jamel Dean. We're asking for more than that. We're asking for the takeaways. We're asking for the availability. And that's what Jamel Dean doesn't have. At this point, we've talked about it so much that he's just not available. And to me, that he's not getting interceptions, I don't know if he ever will. Like, he can do the jugs machines 1,000 times. You don't get a jugs machine type of play in an NFL game. Like the ball doesn't come right at you. You're not just standing there and the quarterback throws it to you. You're
It happened during
running.
the Lions playoff game.
Yeah,
and
and
he
he
dropped
dropped
it in
it.
the end zone.
Exactly. So what was the point of the jugs machine then?
Yeah.
I feel like we talked about this last year with Jamel Dean, and we talked about it with some other guys, but it's worth saying again when we have training camp in a couple of weeks. I wish cornerbacks would do drills that isn't just you standing there and catching the football. I want them actually like covering, having to turn their head and catch the ball. I want them trying to cover a slant, running across the field, catching the ball. I know they do the tip drills, but everyone's going 25%. You're like almost jogging, knocking the ball in the air and going to catch it. And as you said, he still doesn't catch it anyway. So I like Jamel Dean. I don't like the money that they're giving him. I know it's not guaranteed anymore. I'm fine with him as the starter for one more year because I just don't believe that he's going to stay healthy for the entirety of the season. Like, he's only getting older. He's shown that he can't stay in games. So that's why, like, my attention is a little bit more. And Zion McCollum, he's talking a big game, but he's got to back it up at some point. I know we have 2 interceptions this year. 6, 7, that's great. I love that he has goals. I love that they're lofty. I appreciate all of the support of pewterreport.com. But enough talking now, all right? Like, this is another year. I know last year was just like totally his first year starting, but he was essentially a starter the year before with Carlton getting hurt, Jamel Dean getting hurt.
He was popping in there every other game.
Yeah, I think minimum 3 for Zion McCollum. If Zion wants a big deal, I think a minimum of 3 interceptions in order for him to get that next big contract from the Bucs. I think it's in him. He's had a lot of situations where he's dropped it too. And we always bashed Jamel Dean, but we didn't bash Zion that much. And Zion was doing it before last season. It's happened for a while with Zion. He's dropped some easy ones too. So I love Zion, but if he's going to hold himself to a high standard, I think all of us should hold him to a high standard as well. I think he has it in him. I trust him to stay healthy. He plays through a lot of difficult stuff when Jamel Dean hasn't. So with all that said about Zion, I'm kind of more focused on like Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish and even Bryce Hall, just because they're going to end up playing when Jamel Dean is out. So I hope Benjamin Morrison is ready to go by the beginning of the year. I'm curious about how Jacob Parrish is going to look, if he's going to be in the slot playing nickel, if he's going to be outside. Will it be a nickel by committee, as Todd Bowles kind of alluded to on this show? I'm quite intrigued by all the other corners outside of Jamel Dean, because I just think the pressure's been on Jamel Dean for a little bit. It's going to be even more on him this year because there is actually people that he can be replaced with, but I just don't see necessarily the results being different.
Yeah, and there are people that Dean can be replaced with, and I want to get to Ryan T's comment here.
Yeah.
I want to see Morrison and Parrish. I think they're going to be great. And I think you bring up a great point, Matt, that you said when, not if Morrison sees the field, because he's going to see the field, not just because he's a second-round pick, but for some reason or another, Jamel Dean's likely going to get injured next season. Like, that just being frank based on all the evidence that we have. But with Morrison, I'm really intrigued to see what he looks like in training camp. Is he going to be fully recovered from the hip injury that kind of derailed him for the Fighting Irish last year? Yeah. What is he going to look like? Is he going to look like Jacob Parrish, who's having a couple pick sixes during OTAs? Is he going to be up to speed? If he is, Matt, I can see him taking Jamel Dean's job sooner rather than later if it's more of the same for number 35.
I was such a fan, not just when Benjamin Morrison got drafted, but he made a play. I think you were there too, Adam, when he was guarding Emeka Egbuka. Emeka Egbuka jumped into the air, great athleticism, makes an awesome play, but it was an incomplete at the end of the day because Benjamin Morrison knocked it out last minute. And I think those are, that's a play where like no one's getting interception, but it's an incompletion versus, a 25-yard gain. So I think that's going to be like the floor of Benjamin Morrison. Now, we've said before about how, Zion McCollum had all these interceptions like when he played in college, but he wasn't going against the competition, even though Notre Dame plays a lot of a cupcake schedule. There was some tougher competition that Benjamin Morrison went against. And when he has 9 interceptions. And, yeah, exactly. So he's up for the challenge, and we know he can take the football away. I love the passion that he brings. I love the football IQ that he has. I, again, think he's going to be not Darrelle Revis, but he's going to be like the starter of the future for the Bucs, and it may happen this year. That's how high I am on this guy. Now he's got to be healthy. He didn't participate in mandatory minicamp. I'm curious if that was by design or if something kind of tweaked in between OTAs and this mandatory minicamp, because I don't know if we can believe Todd Bowles. He said, I think Tristan Wirfs will be ready by the start of training camp. And now that is not the case. So I hope that he's healthy. I also wouldn't rule out Bryce Hall, doing something this year. Again, he got hurt in week 1. I don't foresee that happening again. But I think it's easy to say that the Bucs are way more prepared at corner than they were a season ago. And that's great going into 2025 because they are going to need it.
Yeah. And so corner, when you look at it, is in a lot better place compared to last year. But what about inside linebacker, Matt? Because there's a couple of guys, right? Levante and Servassier that you kind of still have high expectations for. Levante as he enters an age 35 season, and Servassier Dennis, who you're hoping plays a full season, because the tail of the tape last year for Servassier was that he was great when he was on the field. He played 46.7 of the team's defensive snaps. He had 22 tackles in his first 3 games, had a sack. He showed that he was a good coverage guy. And you know that he has a really high football intelligence. So he's a really solid player on the field. But the expectation for him, I think, first is, can he play 17 games? And what's that going to look like? Is he going to be the full-time starter? Or are you going to see Anthony Walker come in? I'm really interested to see that.
I want to see a platoon situation with the Bucs inside linebackers. And I don't care if it's platooning Levante David on third down. I don't care if it's, playing Anthony Walker Jr. on first down and then Servassier comes in on second and third down. I don't care if it's having certain packages with Deion Jones in the mix, because it's an interesting group with this outside linebacker room. They have veteran guys that haven't been here for that long, besides Levante. Deion Jones just got here in December of last year. I don't count that as being here for a long time. Anthony Walker just signed with the team this year. Servassier Dennis is going into his 3rd year. He's been here long enough to know the defense. And of course, we all know the story with Levante David. He's the GOAT. So once again, much like the corners, I feel good about the overall depth. I trust Anthony Walker in situations because he's quicker than quicker than KJ Britt, who was here a season ago. I trust the instincts of Deion Jones. We saw him have an interception during OTAs, leaping into the air. And I just watched the highlight the other day as well. He had a sick interception off of Drew Brees when he was with the Falcons. Brees, obviously, with the Saints. Yeah. It was on some highlight reel where he caught it in the end zone. It was at the end of the game. The dude can still jump very high. And I think he could sneaky make a couple of big splash plays for the Bucs this year. So I don't trust Servassier Dennis to stay healthy for a full 17 games just because I'm at the point with a lot of these guys with their injuries. If you've been injured for a long time now, and for him it's only been 2 years, but it feels like it's been a long time. I'm not just going to believe that all of a sudden you're just going to magically turn into this player that's an Iron Man and can play all the time. I'm not expecting it with Jamel Dean. I'm expecting double-digit games from Servassier Dennis. He hasn't provided that yet in his career, but I think he can get double-digit games. Now, how do you preserve that? Do you just let it fly, and then when he gets hurt, and you move on from there? Or do you prevent it a little bit by having this platoon situation, this linebacker by committee? Is that more of belief in the other guys, or is that just wanting to keep Servassier Dennis healthy? I'm not totally sure, but when he is available, he's a very fun player. He's a great coverage inside linebacker, and I still think there's a lot left of his game that we haven't seen yet that hopefully we'll see this upcoming season.
Yeah, one of my notes on Servassier Dennis before the show is there's just so much untapped potential there. And when you look at it, like, Bowles respects him. He puts him in the Mike linebacker role where he's trusted to make the play calls, communicate on defense, to be that coverage guy. And you talk about the cornerback room, the inside linebacker room, having more help there. I still go back to Levante David and want to talk about him a little bit more, because this defense, to really get back to the level it was in between 2020 and 2023, it relies on Levante not falling off. This defense cannot afford Levante to fall off this year, because they still need him up the middle. He's still such a vital part, and he
Yeah,
was recently recognized as a top 100 player.
he
There's so
was.
much that he does that puts him in a category of his own, but he still needs to keep that up just one more year, I think, to really unlock the defense's potential.
Do you think he's going to play all 17 games?
I don't think he's going to play all 17, but he is like an Iron Man, and I
Yeah.
think he'll probably play 14, 15 at least.
How about this? Do you think he will get 100 tackles this year?
Yes. I think he'll just get over that.
Yeah. Well, if you want to watch Levante David hopefully get 100 tackles, and would that lead to several wins by the Buccaneers this season, there's no better place to watch the Bucs if you're not at home than over, or at Raymond James Stadium, than over at Walk-Ons. There is great deals with Walk-Ons and their happy hour. Tuesday's the big day to go because it's happy hour all day, and that includes $5 Tito's. What's today? Thursday. You can still go today from 3 to 6. So you still got another hour once this show ends. And you can also go from 9 p.m. until close. They got domestic pints. They got great appetizers like the Hush Puppies and the Boom Boom Shrimp. And, of course, the boneless wing. So tons of great deals over at Walk-Ons. There are 3 in the Tampa Bay area. One over in Lakeland, another in Wesley Chapel, and a third over in Midtown Tampa, not far from Raymond James Stadium at all, just right down the road. So it's a great spot to tailgate, great spot to watch the Bucs road games. You know, they do start the season 2 games in a row on the road, including that Monday game. So if you want to watch the Bucs while they're on the road, if you're not going to be at the game, go over and do it at Walk-Ons. We still got baseball going on. The Open, also formerly known as the British Open, but the Open is coming up next week. WNBA, I think, is going on. And before you know it, football will be back. So eat like a winner and drink like a champ over at Walk-Ons. Speaking of champs, our champs of Pewter Report TV, we got to give a shout out to our Pewter Platinum members. Thank you so much to Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor Four Reels, Kevin Thomas, Mario Thomas, Zach Jarvis, Leighton Carter, Dougai is Gifted, Brandon Riley, Alec Bickler, and Nick Dubuque. Thank you all so very, very much for being Pewter Platinum members. Just a reminder for the Pewter Platinum members and Premier members as well. We appreciate each and every one of you. The return of the Pewter Insider is back again tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. This is exclusive to Pewter Platinum and Premier members. We're going to talk about some inside scoop that we have on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coaching staff. So stay tuned for that one tomorrow at 1:30. And of course, we'll answer any questions and comments that you have during the Pewter Insider. A couple comments I want to get to before we close out the show. We got to Ryan T. Rolf Steinbauer wants to know, does anyone have a read on Whitehead? He is not on the team. The Bucs did not pick up his second-year option in that contract.
Not on any team.
Yeah, he's not on any team at the moment. Remember, he did have that car accident, unfortunately, at the tail end of the season. So I hope he signed somewhere, but no, he is not on the Bucs right now. And then D. Wheeler said, Servase Dennis is amazing. If we can keep him healthy, we have the 2 best linebackers. He has to stop playing like a water boy, bro, just be crashing out. It's funny because I think there's a lot of great duos for the Bucs at several positions. More potential than establishment. Now, the ones established, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, some say they're top 2, some say they're top 5. That argument can be left for another day. But like, you know, Levante is certainly established. Levante and Servase Dennis has to prove it, but that could, you know, get into a top 10 category. Levante's certainly in there, but Servase, I think Antoine Winfield Jr. and Tyke Smith, again, more on the side of Tyke Smith, have to figure it out. And then interior, Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey. Kalijah Cansey plays the first month of the season. that's a top 3 unit
Yeah.
right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look at each of those duos, Matt, it's like you have a veteran and then you have an emerging guy like waiting in the
Yeah.
wings to be next. And I think that again speaks to why the Bucs have such high expectations this year is because you have a nice blend of while this is still a relatively young team, they're seasoned with playoff experience, and then you still have so many guys whose best football is ahead of them. And
Yeah.
for a guy like Zion McCollum, for example, he's 26 years old. Over the next 3-4 years, if the Bucs re-sign him, he's going to be entering like the prime of his career. He's going to be the number one corner most likely. And then you have Benjamin Morrison, who we were talking about, we're high on. He's the guy that's coming up too after Jamel Dean. So there's so many like good duos of this team, and when you look at them position by position, the fact that each of them is in the top 10, it kind of bodes well for the Bucs being a top 10 team.
Yes, it does. And it's a ton of credit for and to Jason Light and Todd Bowles as well for putting this team together and getting them to play at a high level. It's a good mix of veteran players with experience and then young players with a ton of potential that have already proved it to a certain degree, depending on each player at each position. But we covered a lot on today's show. This has been a ton of fun. Just a reminder for everybody, tomorrow we have the Pewter Insider at 1:30 for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. Inside scoop on the Bucs coaching staff. So looking forward to that one. We'll have a full slate of shows next week. And you never know when breaking news will happen. Maybe we'll have another emergency podcast. So make sure you check out all of our shows from this week, including, well, if you're watching right now, including this one too. But we appreciate everybody's support. We're also trying to get to 20,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We are so close. We're less than 500 away. So if you're not already doing so, please follow us on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well. Tell us who you have high expectations for this season or where you think the Bucs will end up, what your expectations are for the team. I think they got to get to at least the second round, and within the next 2 years, make an NFC Championship game appearance, but everyone has differences of opinion. So this has been a lot of fun. That'll do it for us on today's show. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.